Welcome back everyone to another video. Today we're gonna do the second part of our mini-series where we look at this Ravenous Fell Hunter deck. And in the second part we're gonna discuss gameplay, so everything that happens after the mulligan. The general idea of this deck is to early game fight for the board with the Blob of Tar and Fell Hunter. I guess that's more mid game, like early game. Get your Grim Harvest and Slumber and stuff like that out. Use your weapon to draw the Blob of Tar. Stuff like that. Then mid-game, fight for the board with the Blob of Tar and the Fell Hunter. And then eventually finish off your opponent with Cliff Dive or Caulifero. Usually when we play a game of Hearthstone, the first couple of turns are quite simple. I mean, aggro decks are kind of an exception to that sometimes. But they are usually a good place to start thinking about future turns as well. So here we have his turn 1, where he plays 2 1/1s. We're playing against the decay, so that is his 1 mana play, the best one by far. By now, mainly the only possible play he can have on 1 mana. And we're expecting here is a 2 mana follow-up and either the 2/1 with Rush, the 1/2 discover a 3-drop with a Dark Gift, or the Leech spell deal 2 damage and summon a Leech. 3 mana then will depend. It's either some card draw or it's a 3-drop they discovered, something like that. But that's what we're expecting from him. So it's good to have this in our mind while we make decisions on what we want to do with our turn. Sometimes we need it, sometimes it's irrelevant. We just go for our own game plan and we don't really need to consider what he could do. But it's good to have in the back of your head. And if you don't know these options for decay, then after you played against Death Knight a few times, you will remember this. So, of course, like first time you ever play against the Death Knight, you don't know what they are going to do. But this comes a little bit with experience as well. So we have 3 options here, basically, turn 1. And I'm going to list them all. It's a good idea for yourself, just for training and to get into the habit of this, of checking your options. Even if you already know what you want to go for, just take a few seconds to consider whether you have other options. Option 1 here is to hero power and attack either a 1/1 or face. Option 2 is to equip the Tuskpiercer, do the same attack, or no attack is also an option with the Tuskpiercer. And option 3 is play the Infestation. I generally don't recommend holding weapon charges with this deck because you actually want to draw the Death Rattle card from the weapon. Therefore, there's not really any benefit of hero powering over equipping the weapon. The weapon seems to be just a stronger option because you get the attack in now with both options, but you get another 1/1 weapon equipped for future turns, and you get the potential to draw from the weapon with an additional hit. So it overall just seems better. If I go for the weapon, I would also clear a 1/1 here. Basically because early game we are kind of happy if we can fight a little bit for the board. And therefore I would try and remove a 1/1 here with the weapon rather than going face. The 1 damage phase usually doesn't matter, so it's early on anyway. So that leaves us with the third option, which is Coin Infestation. This doesn't do anything this turn. And the only benefit we have from it next turn is that we could play both grubs. So we could play 1 more grub next turn. But this doesn't outweigh the benefit of the Tuskpiercer this turn. So we can still play one grub next turn if we use a coin anyway. And that clears pretty much everything important that he can play next turn. It doesn't clear the 2-1 with Death Rattle, summon a 1-1 Reborn. But most of the things it clears, and that is not that big a threat that we really have to go for the Infestation here. So the Tuskpiercer is usually the best turn 1, and it is for sure here, and we're just going to equip it and make the attack. But if you want to get better, I really highly recommend you get into this mindset of what are my options, what can I actually do, rather than just go with your intuition, which probably was equip the Tuskpiercer. Really think about it. So that's what I'm doing here for sure. And then we wait for our opponent, whether he does one of the 3 plays we mentioned, and he plays the 2-1 with Rush. Now comes our turn 2, and again we have several options. In principle, we can use the Infestation here to just get double 2-1, or we can use the Wyvern Slumber. I think those are the only 2 proper options. I mean, you could do something like play the return policy to get another weapon trigger, but doesn't really make much sense. And then we also have to consider whether we attack, and if so, what we attack. So using the Wyvern Slumber here is not bad. I don't hate this. I think the coin is a little bit too valuable to do this. Because especially in this deck, if you get a Cliff Dive or a Cauliflower or something like that out a turn before with a coin, or just an Inquisitor, it can decide the game. So I wouldn't want to use the coin here, especially because we might want to use it for Infestation anyway, like for a grub later on. So personally, I would just go for the Infestation, set up stronger future turns, because then I have the 2-1s for future turns, and wait for the Slumber. The one reason to go for the Slumber is because your dormant minions wake up a turn earlier and can fight for the board one turn earlier. That's not a small benefit. That's actually quite a major benefit of the Slumber. I think it's just outweighed by the fact that we actually do have something to do here with the Infestation that is not wasting our turn and is not needing the coin. So I would, and gives us more flexibility therefore for the later turns. So I would go for the Infestation here. If you do go for the Slumber, that's fine as well. Just make sure you thought about it properly. And then we also have to decide what are we going to do with our attack. I don't hate holding it, because you could draw more Death Rattle minions before you attack. And I don't mind hitting either the 2-1 or the 1-1. I personally would hit the 1-1 because we don't have any life gain here, so this removes the same amount of damage as hitting the 2-1, and the main reason I would say is that the 2-1 itself offers him less flexibility than 2-1-1s. 2-1-1s can trade better than 1-2-1. So luckily he has nothing here, turn 3, which is really good for us, which leaves us with our turn 3. Turn 3, the obvious option is to just go for the Slumber now. Again, the earlier you can play the Slumber, the earlier your dormant minions awaken and can fight for board. The alternative option is to use coin blob, but we don't really have to do this yet. We can wait a turn here. I don't think whether we get the blob out this turn or next turn matters that much. So I would just go for the Wyvern Slumber. Every other option we have here regarding like return policy, etc. is not really worth it, especially since now we've drawn the Ravenous Fell Hunter. So we really want to use the return policy on the Ravenous Felhunter later on, or at least have the option. So I would go just for keep playing on curve here. Now he plays a 2/4 poisonous, and we draw actually the Grim Harvest here, which is super interesting because that gives us an additional option. Usually, like, so far our game plan went precisely as expected, right? We went for the 1 mana card, we went for the 2 mana card, we went for the 3 mana card. We did have coin plus grub if we needed it. We didn't really need it, so we didn't use it. Now we have actually a choice to make. Because this 2/4 with poisonous, that trades quite decently with our 2/4, and he still has the 2/1, which can trade into the 1/2 poisonous remnant of our Blob of Tar. So if we do go for our 2/4 here, our own Blob of Tar, we're running the risk that he's clearing it quite easily. Alternatively, we can use our 2 grubs to clear the 2/4 completely, which is not a bad use of them, and use the Grim Harvest to draw a card and summon another dormant minion. And again, the dormant minion wakes up a turn earlier if we go for this play, and we draw an additional card, which gets us closer to getting like a Cliff Dive or an Artist or something. Artist being Colifero. The one downside of going for this play is that it's using all our cheap mana cards, so we lose flexibility for the later turns. Technically, we also have the option to red card the 2/4 here if we want to, but then we have to deal with it later, so I don't really love that either. I think you can go for either play. You can go for the Blob of Tar, or you can go for the Grim Harvest plus double grub. One more thing about the grubs is that they're really good against leeches. So if he plays a lot of leeches later on and we can't deal with them, that's not great. I personally prefer this play though, because it gives him less initiative. So what we really want to avoid is that our Blob of Tar remnants die for free, for example, to his 2/1. That our 1/2 poisonous dies to a 2/1, that's horrible. So it's kind of hedging our bets a little bit to take initiative ourselves here and play the grubs and the Grim Harvest. That's why I probably would go for this play. I actually don't remember what I did here. But it's only like a tad above the Blob of Tar player, in my opinion. Let's see what I do here. And it looks like I'm actually do go for the Grim Harvest. And I do draw another Grim Harvest. This we don't use here because we kind of have to kill the 2/4 now, otherwise it trades with a 3/3 for free. Okay, he hero powers here, which is fantastic for us. Makes me think probably this was also a good play for us, because he basically did 5 mana of nothing. Okay, we have another turn here. And we have the obvious play of playing the Blob of Tar plus hero power. But we might consider using the coin now, because we are quite far into our deck. We haven't drawn a Cliff Dive yet, so we probably don't need, we can't coin it out if we don't have it. And we also already have double Blob of Tar plus double Felhunter plus return policy. So we have a lot of stuff to do already, which doesn't really require the coin. Like we can go for the Blob of Tar coin harvest now, then we can hero power Fell Hunter or red card Fell Hunter the turn after, then we can return policy Blob of Tar, then we have Magteridon. Like we have a lot of plays where the mana works out very well. So I actually prefer using the coin now, even though it's kind of going against what I said in the earlier turns. But it's better to not need the coin and have it. And that is what happened here. So we didn't need the coin for the first 4 or 5 turns. We still don't need it. We could do another play. And especially in the early games, you kind of want to preserve the coin if you have roughly equal plays. Of course, if one play is much better, then you use the coin. So I think I'm going to go for coin harvest into Blob of Tar here. And this is a play which I personally wouldn't see unless I stop and consider my options. Because it's so natural here to just hero power the 1/1, that's good, and play the 2/4, that's good. Like, why use the coin? But I think it's actually correct here. Now, the one bad thing here would be if the 2/4 doesn't die. Because if the 2/4 doesn't die, then we can't really play a Fell Hunter. But it does die here. It dies annoyingly easy. But okay, that's the way it works. So now we do draw the cliff dive, which is a little bit annoying because we just used our coin. It would have been much better to still have the coin here, so that on turn 7 we could go for that. But no reason to think about that anymore because we don't have the coin anymore. Okay. So we don't really have many options here. We have to go for the Ravenous Fell Hunter. Everything else doesn't make much sense. I'm trading off 1 leech here because 1 leech doesn't do anything. It does 2 damage to one of our 3 health minions. So what? But 2 would kill a minion. So really trading here the 3/3 into a leech is very important. Of course, he might do something else that negates that reasoning, but we play against what we see as well. Okay, he does clear a lot here, and he plays another leech monster. So by now, we could argue that we are quite unhappy that we didn't keep the Infestation minions, but I think it was still okay. The grubs from the Infestation, because they would be excellent here in clearing the 0/2s, the leeches. We have here now for the first time the option of going for a Cliff Dive. Cliff Dive can give us Elise, which could clear and kill a 0/2. It could give us Colifero or Inquisitors or the Drake. So it's a decent option of clearing. The problem is, if we do get the Inquisitors, we can't attack phase. And everything will go back to the deck afterwards. So while it does help in clearing the board, it doesn't actually develop the board, which kind of puts it out of what we want to do here. We can go for... Well, that leaves us basically with 2 options. It leaves us with option 1 being return policy plus plop, or weapon plus return policy, or I guess weapon plus blob. All those are options here. And we can also decide whether we want to use the red card here in case we go return policy and what did I say? Return policy and the weapon. So what do I think is actually best here? I think we want to put some pressure, so I would use the return policy and the weapon. The weapon allows us to trade off one of the leeches. Also, like if we do go for Cliff Dive next turn, we don't have to hero power with it, giving us 1 more mana for a red card, for example. Alternatively, we can also go for weapon plus Blob of Tar. I don't hate that play either. And then we trade the 2/4 into the 3/5s to avoid him getting much more here out of these 0/2s. So I think all 3 options are valid. I wouldn't go for Return Policy plus Blob of Tar because that just sets up too many 2/4s and is very weak against Corpse Explosion, for example. I probably would go for the weapon and the Blob of Tar because that uses our mana very well, leaving us with a Return Policy for a later turn where we might not have the mana to play a Blob of Tar for 4 mana. And then getting 2 for 3 mana is great. Now, we're seeing that our opponent is actually running out of cards here as well, which is quite interesting because he's a control deck. Less cards mean less options for him. He now goes for more leeches. So we are also really happy that we killed off the 3/5s. Now we have another turn here where we have several options. We could go for Cliff Dive. It would clear this. And if we do get the Inquisitor, we can now also attack face, which would be nice. But the Cliff Dive isn't running away. We still have double Inquisitor and Drake in there, so we can wait with the Cliff Dive. So the other 2 options are Magteridon. That is quite nice because that clears the board. It does 3 damage to him. It gives us time to hit him with our 2/4, although that's not that much damage. We can draw a card with the portal, so that's great. Alternatively, we could go for the Return Policy plus Ravenous Fellhunter. Also pretty strong because that is very hard for him to clear. Except if he has a Corpse Explosion, because the Fellhunter needs exactly 9 damage to die off. Well, everything to die off. And he has exactly 9 corpses, and we want to kill the 0/2s anyway. So that would be a little bit weak against Corpse Explosion. That's why I would personally go for the Magteridon here, just to set up, get us further ahead and then set up a good Cliff Dive turn for hopefully next turn. I don't mind either of the other 2 plays either, though, as long as you think about what you can do here. Okay, he here goes for a very annoying play, which is card draw. I'm kidding, of course. It's not that bad, but he's quite low on cards, so we're not happy to see that he has card draw. Here, now we draw another Return Policy. Now our Cliff Dive is actually not working anymore. Why is it not working anymore? Because Magteridon goes off first. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. So if we do get the Wild Spawn Drake, it doesn't do anything. The only thing that does something from Cliff Dive here now is the Inquisitors. So that's not great. So what are the other options? To set up Colifero, should we draw it? We could go for the Dangerous Cliffside plus Return Policy. I don't think we need to go for the Dangerous Cliffside here, but it's a little bit of a question what we do with our mana. Return Policy seems pretty strong. Return Policy plus Ravenous Fellhunter seems like the right idea, because this builds our board and forces him to do something, for example with Corpse Explosion or any other clear he could have. although that is quite difficult to clear without Corpse Explosion. So that's the play I would do. And then notice that we have double red card here. Double red card is pretty useless because like there is minions you want to red card, but usually there's not 2 minions you want to red card. I mean, it can happen, but it's it gives you less options than 2 different cards, for example. And he is low on cards. So there is the idea that you can prevent him from drawing a card here by red carding the 2/2. And I think that's actually worth it because you do have the second red card. If you didn't have the second red card, that would be... I would never do that. But because we do have the second red card, we can. And we can also attack into the 2/2 if we want to instead. I don't like that either, so I would just hold the weapon. So I would go for Return Policy, Fell Hunter, and red card. In line with the thinking of we want to fight for the board. This is still kind of the mid game. It's a little bit... It doesn't look like the mid game anymore because he's at 45 health and we are 9 mana. But we can't finish him off with Cliff Dive. Like, no matter how much damage we get from the Cliff Dive, it's not going to be that much. So we still want to fight for the board and still get the damage from the board to him. So that we can actually win. So now he only has 3 cards. Because we did red cards the 2/2. If we didn't do that, he would have 4 cards. So he would have 1 option more out of 3 cards. That's like 33% more options. That's bad. Now he has a very annoying Shaladrasi Hill, which gives him a lot more options, but nothing we can do to prevent this. Okay, now he has minions on board, and I think now we have minions on board, so it's time to really go for the Cliff Dive here. We also know his entire hand right now, and there's nothing really that can deal with like what we have on board, so the Cliff Dive should be perfectly fine. Then the question is, how do we do the attacks? So we probably trade the 2/4 into the 7/9 just to get that away, because we want to attack with the minions from Cliff Dive. And then we basically have 2 options depending on what we get here. So we play the Cliff Dive first. And then we could either red card Magteridon to clear his board. Because then the Magteridon clears the 1/2. Or we could trade and trade the 5/5 away and then let our Briarspawn Drake clear the 1/2. That's the option I go for here. I'm not entirely sure it's correct, but I kind of like it because it also makes Colifero better. And while it increases the chances, it pulls the Inquisitors, which is really where most of the damage is. Of course, Elise would also be really bad if we get that from Colifero. Then we would rather have the Drakes. But I think overall this is the stronger play. And it also does a little bit more damage to him. So he does draw his cards finally here with the Serra Awakens. And then he actually draws the Corpse Explosion, which is unfortunate because otherwise we would have won by now. Okay, so here we actually do draw Colifero. The question is now, what do we want to do with Colifero? We kind of want to set up lethal. There's most of the cards we actually have in hand do this. So we have Return Policy, summoning more minions. We have Ravenous Fell Hunters, summoning more minions. And we have Cliffside, summoning more minions. So it doesn't actually the difference in these is smaller than you would expect. One option is to go for Far Hunter plus Cliffside. One other option is to go for the Policy plus Cliffside. And another option is to go for Policy plus Far Hunter. I personally would say probably because he only has 4 cards and 2 of them are the minions from Shaladwasil, so they don't really play a role here, that we want to go for Policy plus Fell Hunter, simply to put the most pressure and to increase the likelihood that we have lethal without Cauliflower, because Cauliflower still can pull Elise, and that would be bad. I mean, it wouldn't be horrible, we would get a board of 3/5s, but it wouldn't be great. So, because we have the luxury of such a strong hand here, I would say probably the best play is Return Policy plus Fell Hunter. However, using the cliff sides here to get some damage in already is also not horrible. Like, we could already do 5 damage to him here, so that he has 6 life next turn, unless he heals up somehow. Okay, so I do go kind of a middle way. I do some damage this turn, which is also fine, and then I also summon double 2/4. Now here we never activate the cliffside actually, because we want to activate that for Cauliflower next turn. So he goes for some card draw and realizes that it's over and concedes here. And it was more or less over. I mean, we didn't have lethal in hand, I don't think, but it was overall a good time to call it quits, especially if he didn't draw anything good there. Okay, overall that was a game where we had a very strong hand. Like, we had a good opening hand, we had the perfect curve opening, and we also got pretty lucky with our draws. Not perfect, but pretty good. And in those games you often have quite a few choices to make. Oftentimes they are not that different in strengths, but it really pays off in the long run if you consider your choices. So I would really encourage you to use your time in those games and really think about what you can do, even if you think it's clear what you should do. Because oftentimes you might find something that you didn't think about immediately. But overall that was a very straightforward game in some sense, or what I mean by this is we had such a good hand that we would have probably made or gotten the win, even with quite a few misplays there, especially because our opponent wasn't so lucky with his cards. So let's have a look at the second game. This one is against Warlock. We again discussed the mulligan last video. Here we expect Egg Warlock, potentially some Aggro Warlock, but more likely Egg Warlock is what I think. Against Egg Warlock, we want the blobs out as fast as possible to kill off Kalos. So they go for the 20/20 with Taunt from the eggs. They just die to poisonous. So if we can kill them, we win the game. Of course, they can have like lots of duplication and revival, and sometimes they can overpower you. But overall, that has to be our aim, to get the blob of tar out as quickly as possible, especially before he can get a 20/20 out. So for that reason, we use the Tuskpiercer, and we can hold it here. And the advantage of holding it here is if we draw a Fell Hunter, we get more likely to draw a blob of tar from the weapon. So it overall increases the chance that we have a blob of tar on turn 4. At some point we have to start attacking though, because he might start freezing us. So I think latest turn 2 we should probably start attacking. He does nothing, turn 1. Turn 2, again pretty obvious. This game is a lot easier because we don't have the coin, so we don't have any options. We just go for the Grim Harvest. And here now I think we actually should attack. He gives us a confirmation that he is Egg Warlock by applying the Egg Bearer, or what it's called. Which isn't very surprising to us. And we, again, only have one play. We go for the Dormant Minions. Now we should actually play the 2-4. So we should attack here and play the 2-4 we get. If we get it, otherwise we have to play Elise as a backup plan. I am not going for the Seer. I'm too focused on putting pressure on him. I think that is probably wrong because, as I mentioned earlier, we want the 2-4 out, especially against Egg Warlock. So I would prefer attacking here, play the 2-4. Elise is another option, so that's the second option to consider, going for a 5 mana card. That's another advantage of going for the Blob of Tar now. Then we could next turn go for 1 mana location, so we would already have a 5 mana play. I mean, we also have that with Elise, but then we only have the location. And interesting here would also be Wyvern Slumber plus red card, because that slows him down. I don't really want to go for this here, because I don't want to fill my board with dormant minions. They don't really do anything, and I already have a dormant minion there. So I prefer to play one of our 4 mana cards. Ideally the blob, but we don't do this here. We go for Elise. So now that we are going for Elise, we still have the option to go for 1 if we want to play the Blob of Tar. But then we would need to attack with the weapon first to confirm that we do get the blob. Here we get 3 options. All of them are reasonable. I don't like the middle one. Why do I not like the middle one? Because that depends on us already having stuff on board. It doesn't really do anything if we don't have stuff on board. Summoning a 5/5, especially of like a Death Rattle minion, is great. It gives you more poisonous to deal with more of the stuff. Discovering a spell is also great. Can give you really good spells. Can give you something like immunity from Outcast or something like that. So I don't mind that at all. You can also take the 2 attack to everything, but if they clear your board and you only have 2 3/3s here and a 3/5, it doesn't really do anything. So I think this is actually a mistake. I go for the +2 attack to everything to get more pressure. And this one is pretty obvious. Here we need to go for the 5/5 copy of a minion. The 3/2/1 Raptors with Rush, they don't really do anything against this deck. They don't do anything against the 2020, and they don't really play any other minions that you want to clear. I guess they can get 8/8s, but not really. And now we see I attack at the end of my turn, which is just a concession that I misplayed. I should have done this at the start of the turn and then played the blob if I get it. Okay, let's put this behind us though. We can here either use the Blob of Tar and the red card. That's pretty good. Or we can use the location. Unfortunately, the location doesn't do anything. So I think we should just go for the Blob of Tar and use the red card. Because the red card still slows him down and we have 2 of them. So it's perfectly fine to use 1 here. Like his deck basically plays only around the egg. So if you can red card the egg, that just costs him a turn. I mean, he can do card draw and he can clear board and stuff, but he can't progress his own game plan. It's also quite often nice to have it later on to like get a taunt out of the way, but we have two, so I think we should just go for it. So he triggers the egg twice, and now I draw the weapon here, and here the first question is, can we actually kill off the 2020? Because that would be really bad for him. If we can kill that off, then he would need the legendary, I forgot what it's called, that triggers all the death rattles again. So we can kill it off once with a weapon, but then we are missing 1 mana to kill it off again with the cliffside. So unfortunately we can't quite get there. So now that we've got this out of the way, the options are Wyvern, Slumber plus X. That is a little bit too slow, I would say. Or we go for location and red card. I think that's the other option that allows us to summon a 5/5 here and delay him a little bit, and we get some damage in from the plus attack that we erroneously picked on the location. So I don't mind that. I think that's the best play. Location plus red card. You can also go for the weapon, but then your Wyvern Slumber gets activated a little bit late. It doesn't have that much of an effect anymore. We need to expect him to trigger the next turn if we don't do anything. So I think we should red card it here. Okay, he can't progress his own game plan for this turn. That's good. The red card only really works 1 turn against this deck, but 1 turn is more than nothing. Unfortunately, he has some heal here. He doesn't use his location, which kind of gives away that he has the reborn thing. We draw Infestation, which is a lot more damage, so it makes sense here to go for the axe and Infestation. And then we want to maximize our damage, which would be everything face, of course. And I would use the hero power here and the stinger, because if we get to attack him with Inquisitor next turn, we are very likely to win anyway. And if we don't, this maximizes the damage we can do over 2 turns, because we can weave the hero power in twice. And we can play the cliffside again next turn as well. So he does have layover, as expected. So this kills off my entire board, unfortunately, and there was nothing I could do against this. And now I'm expecting him to trigger the egg as well to get the Kalos. And that's exactly what happened. But we do have the red card here to kill him off if he doesn't do anything. So the question is now, does he have something like Coin Heal? He doesn't. He passes his turn, and then we just end the game. There's many options here, but yeah. So those were the 2 games where I wanted to talk a little bit about the gameplay with this deck. So the first one, we had a very good hand, but it showcased kind of how this deck plays with rebuilding the board of Blob of Tars over and over until you get a chance to kill them with Cliff Dive. It was not super representative in the sense that the Cliff Dive wasn't really needed there, and we were ahead most of the game, so we hold the Cliff Dive for longer. Sometimes you have to use the Cliff Dive to go for a lethal potential. The second game, just showcased a little bit how we can do pressure with this deck. We still had the 2/4, but we didn't have anything else. We had the blob, but we didn't have the Fell Hunters or anything. But in the end, it showcases that you can also win by pressure with this deck, especially against something like Egg Warlock, and you can win from the dormant minions. The second game also showcased that Elise has a place in this deck, because the location was pretty good here. If you take something away from this video, I would say it should be that you really consciously consider your options and think about your options. In Hearthstone in general, you won't get better by playing on autopilot. Or at least you will get better much slower. Some things you will get better at, especially things like experience. What I mentioned early on, what could my opponent do turn 1, what could my opponent do turn 2. Those things you will get better even if you just play on autopilot. But generally speaking, I think it is really important to consider your options and to also evaluate your options accordingly, especially if you notice something is going wrong. So if you lose a game or you make a play and your opponent has a perfect answer, it's a time to question whether you should have gone for another play. And you can only do this if you even saw the other options you had. Something like post-game analysis can help with this, but you can also do a lot of that during the games you're playing. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like or subscribe. Let me know if you want to see more of these videos, if you want me to do it a little bit differently. I realize that this is not like a one-to-one recipe on how to play the deck, because this doesn't exist. There is no one-to-one recipe to play any Hearthstone deck, at least not at a level above gold, or I don't know where. That's why I'm trying to go quite into detail into all the plays I've made here. And also let me know if you want me to do one of these for another deck. I'm going on Christmas break now, so this will probably not happen before Christmas break. There will be videos, but they will be standard Let's Play videos. But maybe after. I will only make these for decks though where I feel like I have a rather good grasp on what I'm doing myself, because otherwise I think it's pointless. Why would you want me to teach you a deck where I have no idea what I'm doing? That makes no sense. But yeah, leave in the comments if you want to see this for another deck that you have seen me play as well, in particular, because yeah, I've never played Quest Warrior. I don't plan on playing Quest Warrior. I like myself too much for that. So I probably won't ever do a video like this about Quest Warrior. I hope you all have a good Christmas break if you're celebrating. Or if you're not celebrating, maybe you still have some time off. And I will see you tomorrow for a normal video, hopefully.